She's a contributing editor at The Atlantic and author of the book, Give People Money, How a Universal Basic Income Would End Poverty, Revolutionize Work, and Remake the World.
And we are excited to be joined now by Annie Lowery. Great to see you, Annie.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
So if you just give people money, aren't they just gonna like sit on the couch and eat Cheetos all day and be lazy?
Yeah, so there's certainly a reduction in work effort if you just give people cash. That's absolutely true. But we actually have studies of this. There are a bunch of studies done in the 60s and 70s because Richard Nixon, of all people, was really interested in this idea of putting an income floor under everybody. So the idea would be that the United States would basically guarantee that you wouldn't sink further into poverty than a certain level. And so he had these two guys, Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld, run these tests.
I've heard of those guys.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with them.
I know, it's like a little weird historical quirk that they also worked on these, and so they guaranteed people an income. And they did stop working, some of them. There was a reduction in work effort. People didn't really drop out of the labor force. It was mostly because students stayed in school for longer, people who were unemployed took a little longer to find a job. People with young kids worked a little less, and older folks
stayed home with
less.
their kids more.
Yeah. So, I think it's absolutely true that there's some amount of money that you could give people that people would stop working. But when we were talking about, the kind of proposals that could be on the table soon in 2020, $500 or even $1,000 a month is probably not going to stop people from working.
This is a fascinating issue, and I know you've written a book on it because of that. But Crystal and I were talking about how this is one of those places where you see a left-right split on this, but also a left-left and right-right split, meaning there are people on both sides who argue whether it's a good idea. So some of my people, for example, conservatives, in case you didn't know at home, they look at, I think even Charles Murray, some others have written favorably about a universal basic income. Their argument tends to be that this would stream, because we got a welfare state. No one's saying a welfare state's going away anytime soon. So this streamlines it. This makes it more cost effective. You don't need bureaucrats who are saying, I'm going to take money from the taxpayer, give it to people so they can buy things, and I'm getting money just because I'm doing that, right? I mean, what are some of the conservative arguments for this?
Absolutely, and you're precisely right. This has like a long conservative lineage as well. Back to Hayek again. Richard Nixon was really interested in it.
I think Friedman actually didn't Charles.
Friedman, and Charles Murray has been writing about this for decades. And so the argument there kind of comes from two sources. So one is exactly that the government is not as good at choosing how to spend money as people are, and that this would be hugely efficient. You could get rid of a huge amount of government programs and government bureaucrats if you just gave people cash. And so, we actually see this happening almost in real time. So with the work requirements that were going to be implemented in the Kentucky Medicaid program, it showed that the administrative cost to the state went up like 40%. So it's a lot of money, billions of dollars that you spend just getting the money out to people. And then the second kind of conservative argument is one about paternalism. Right? Why should the government tell you what you can buy?
You can spend it on this kind of food product or this kind of housing. Just give people the cash and let them make
right.
So
depending on the state that you're in the food stamp program, it's literally like you can buy this kind of potato, but you can't buy that kind of potato, or this is all right, but that isn't. And I think that a lot of conservatives just object to that kind of government nannying.
So one of the critiques from the left is that a lot of Silicon Valley folks are excited about this idea, right? And the critique is that, they just want to be able to hand out cash and keep doing what they're doing and sort of throw some pennies to the masses and not have to worry about it.
Right. Yeah. So it's this idea that, if we had really a lot of technologically driven unemployment, who wants, say that you're, a truck driver with a $70,000 a year job, and that job goes away because it's automated away, and instead the government is offering you $12,000 a year in cash. Like, that's not a great equilibrium. People like working. They want to keep working. And so I think that that's one of the objections is, let's fix the economy to make sure that people are still able to fully participate. Because I don't think that a lot of people, able-bodied people, people do really like to work, and they find a lot of social support in working, and it gives them some identity and meaning. And so I think that that's, exactly one of those critiques. What would society would have to change and the economy would have to change if AI and all of these other kind of fantastic technologies put people out of work?
Now, a primary conservative critique of this is that once you establish this program, $500 a month, $1,000, whatever it would be, Now you have a number, now you have an expectation, and that number is only going to go one direction, and that is up. And the other programs around it aren't going to go away. Do we have any empirical data? Do we have anything to show what would happen with that? Because I think this is kind of like the argument over a value-added tax. People say, oh, now they'll just have that plus all the other taxes. With this, it's you'd have universal basic income plus all of the other welfare programs, and they would just get more expensive over time. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, so I think it would be pretty important. So one interesting thing about a universal basic income is this idea of everybody is getting something. You wouldn't want to erode the government's kind of natural progressivity, right? Does it really make sense to give somebody who's really poor the same amount of money as you're giving a Bill Gates? So that's kind of one objection, right? How are you making sure that the government really is directing its help towards people who need that help? And then I think that you're right. If it becomes this trade-off of needing to cut other programs or disinvest in other things because of a UBI, that's it's a very good question and a very good concern. But I think that probably people right now are looking at much more marginal and targeted policies that are kind of related to the idea, but something like cash grants for poor kids. About 20% of kids in the United States grow up in poverty. That's a policy, that's a problem that policy could really solve. Or something like using a negative income tax to eliminate sort of the worst kind of cash poverty for folks who sort of fall through the safety net. It's a much more marginal proposal. Even things like making the programs that we do have less paternalistic, more direct, more automatic, less run by government bureaucrats. Is something that people have talked about.
So there's an incremental approach to this.
Absolutely.
And in my view, I mean, the funding is a question, but I almost think the cultural issues are more problematic and more challenging. But great book. Really excited about it. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and perspective with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Tomorrow on Rising, I sit down with Republican Congressman Devin Nunes from California. He is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. He's going to have a lot of things you're going to want to hear about.
Absolutely.
And KB's going to tell me what I really need to press him on. So that'll be interesting.
We'll talk after the show. Thanks for joining us today. We will see you all tomorrow morning.
Later.